Developing right now on Morning News Now, President Trump facing the fallout from a new report about his past friendship with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the president ordering Attorney General Pam Bondi to release, quote, pertinent grand jury testimony from the Epstein case.
I think it's very important that America knows what's going on. I'm big on transparency.
What is the Trump administration hiding from the American people? That's the question that needs to be answered.
Meanwhile, the White House addressing concerns about the president's health, saying he was diagnosed with a common chronic condition. And then on Capitol Hill, a controversial multi-billion-dollar funding cut package now heading to the president's desk after an overnight vote. We'll have all those updates from Washington. Controversy in court as the Justice Department recommends a one-day prison sentence for the former Louisville police officer who killed Breonna Taylor. And in Idaho, a sweeping gag order lifted just days before the sentencing of Brian Koberger. We'll break down the latest. Also developing this morning, another summer storm set to slam parts of the South and the East Coast after days of downpours. We're tracking the system and what it means for your weekend. Plus, taking birthday giveaways to the extreme. We'll introduce you to one man who celebrated his special day for the low, low price of free. I'll have that coming up a little bit later, but thank you so much for joining us on a Friday. Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off today. We've got a lot going on. We're going to begin this morning with the increasing pressure on the Trump administration to release files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The president posted on social media last night that he's directed his attorney general, Pam Bondi, to produce what he calls pertinent testimony tied to the Epstein case. Earlier on Thursday, the White House said it would not appoint a special counsel to review the case. In a new development here, the Wall Street Journal has published a story. It says that more than 2 decades ago, President Trump wrote a letter to Jeffrey Epstein that reportedly included an outline of a naked woman and a Donald signature. This was part of a bunch of letters for a birthday. The president has denied writing the letter, calling it fake and threatening to sue the paper. The Journal story says that Mr. Trump was asked to contribute to this collection of letters that Epstein's then confidant Ghislaine Maxwell was planning to give to Epstein for that birthday. NBC News has not independently verified that or seen the letter. Meanwhile, we're also learning more about the president's medical diagnosis. He has a condition that causes blood to pool in his legs. The White House addressed the condition yesterday during its press briefing.
This concern was thoroughly evaluated by the White House medical unit. The president underwent a comprehensive examination, including diagnostic vascular studies. Bilateral lower extremity venous Doppler ultrasounds were performed and revealed chronic venous insufficiency. Importantly, there was no evidence of deep vein thrombosis or arterial disease.
We'll have much more ahead this hour on President Trump's medical diagnosis, as well as that latest victory in Congress. But let's begin with NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. We're going to start with the latest in the Epstein controversy. Vaughn, good morning. So first, let's start with this Wall Street Journal article. It was published last night. This is this letter, they say, President Trump allegedly wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. In a phone interview with the Journal, the president denied writing that letter. We know he's also threatening legal action in response, something we've seen him do before, of course, to press. What more can you tell us?
Right. This is a president that has a deep history of denials. He says that this letter was not written by him, and the caricature of the woman's body that is described in this Wall Street Journal story was not drawn by him. The Wall Street Journal moved forward with the publication of this, despite, as they say, on Tuesday night, they talked directly with the president, who threatened to sue them if they moved forward with publishing their reporting here. The Wall Street Journal is outlining not criminal activity by the president, to be clear, but suggesting that as part of the files that the Department of Justice has, as it pertains to its longstanding investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, that there are files that had not been publicly made available at this point in time that pertain to the now president. At the same time, the Department of Justice has made it clear that they had released previously all information that was relevant, what they say, to any criminal investigations. That is longstanding practice to not release evidence that does not directly implicate anybody in a direct indictment. And so there is a question here moving forward as to what other references there may be in files related to the president who had a lengthy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But again, it's a question of what may amount to just simply evidence of a relationship, but that is not any that would not contribute to any allegation of criminal wrongdoing by the president.
Vaughn, the president said, though, he's not planning to appoint a special counsel to review the Epstein case. We heard that from his press secretary. It's something that even some of his allies, quite a few actually, had advocated for. How close do you think we are to seeing any files related to Epstein become public? Are there any legal obstacles in the way? Do you see the White House changing course at all as people, members of his own party, supporters of his, continue to call for this?
Right. The legal obstacles are not wanting to taint anybody who, again, the Department of Justice did not seek to bring criminal charges against, that there may be individuals that provided witness testimony that was unable to be corroborated, that DOJ prosecutors ultimately decided not to bring charges against because they didn't have a body of evidence that they found that would amount to worthy of criminal charges. And, of course, the DOJ and the FBI have outlined that there were more than 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and there are sensitive details that have been redacted about Jeffrey Epstein's dealings and relationships, not wanting to reveal the identities of those victims or difficult details from the evidence that was gathered. These are not just grand jury testimony, which Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, indicated last night at the request of the president she will seek to unseal and release. But this is a question also of other records that may be on hand here. And of course, this is all part of now many years in the making, an effort by those particularly on the right, allies of the president, to have more records of Jeffrey Epstein involved, but not under the scope that President Trump, would be implicated in any of this. There was a belief that there was a great cabal of celebrities and high-ranking Democrats that were associates of Jeffrey Epstein and would be found to be a part of this ring and a part of this illegal activity that Jeffrey Epstein had engaged in.
Vaughn, also, I do want to ask you quickly about this, the president's health. He's been diagnosed with what's called chronic venous insufficiency. What are we learning from the White House about the condition and how it might impact his day-to-day work?
This was acknowledged yesterday by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt after it was documented in that photo that you're seeing here this week, the president with swollen ankles. This is when the valve is around in the lower legs have difficulty sending blood back up to the heart. This is also coming after several months of photos have shown the president with bruises on his hands, and earlier this week it included makeup appearing to cover up one of the bruises. The White House saying that that was caused by aspirin to address cardiovascular concerns that the president was taking, and from handshakes with the aspirin, a blood thinner, causing those bruises here. The White House says that there are not any more serious symptoms for the president, that he is not taking any other steps outside of taking the aspirin for this cause here. But at the same time, this is acknowledged by the White House after the questions about these images here came out, Savannah.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard, thank you so much for joining us on this, covering a lot for us this morning. Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel on this. Dr. Patel, good morning. So this is being called a common condition, especially for someone of the president's age. A lot of people, though, might not have heard of this chronic venous insufficiency. First, just explain what it is, if you don't mind. Vaughn did a good job, showed those pictures, kind of like what it can present as. But what exactly is going on in the body?
Savannah, he did indeed. It is a chronic, common condition. About 1 in 20 Americans actually have this diagnosis, especially after the age of 50. And what it really involves are the veins. The veins are the big pipes in your body that bring blood back to your heart. And because of gravity, the way we sit, the way we stand, they have these valves that are pretty tough that go one way, always to bring the blood back to your heart. Over time, and associated especially with obesity, high blood pressure, and some other common metabolic conditions, those valves can become very weak and blood can unfortunately go the reverse direction and pool. And that's why you see that swelling around the legs and ankles. Again, very common and a chronic progressive condition.
And what's the treatment for this? How does it impact someone's life?
Right. So the treatment depends on the stages. Let's just assume, just based on what the president's physician reported and the pictures that we have, that this is probably in the early to moderate stages. This is right at the time where you would do very conservative therapy, things like compression stockings. Normally, I would tell patients to try to elevate their legs and then to try to ambulate, not to sit for prolonged periods of time. Try telling that to an active president. So in addition to this, he might be evaluated. There are medical interventions, everything from prescription pharmaceutical drugs all the way to more intensive therapies that can be done, laser therapy, surgeries. But it doesn't seem like the president's condition is advanced enough to merit that. But treatment options abound.
I want to ask you also about those bruises on the president's hand that have been seen, and then also those questions that Vaughn had just mentioned there about makeup that it looked like was covering them. Again, the president's 79 years old. I think people have seen those types of markings on the back of somebody who's a little bit older's hand. But is this related? Does that seem serious?
No, the two are unlikely related. And by the way, anybody over the age of about 60 who's ever had an IV in their hand, this is exactly what their hands look like. And it can last, by the way, bruising can last for weeks. And so hard to know kind of what exactly caused it. Certainly taking a low dose of aspirin, as they expressed the president is doing, can certainly make that worse. But it is something that overall isn't shocking, but not related to the venous insufficiency.
And doctor, does any of these things, the venous insufficiency, what we were just discussing with the hands, does any of it make you kind of like concerned the bigger picture of the president's health overall, or does this seem kind of unsurprising to you given his age?
So the bigger picture is overall not concerning. The fact that he has chronic venous insufficiency does not automatically correlate to something life-threatening like sudden cardiovascular disease. However, given his age, given the fact that we know between weight, age, lifestyle, that none of this is shocking. And I would just say that these are all things that if this were any patient of mine with the exact same conditions would merit kind of lifestyle changes. Again, how do you do that as the president of the United States? I do think that it would be nice to see more complete records with the numbers, with some of these kind of underlying metabolic assumptions that the president's physician just put in kind of a shorter statement. I think that would reassure everybody and also give us a little bit more of a picture into what is likely a normal aging process for a 79-year-old. But again, these are things that should be monitored. They can lead to more serious conditions, and we'll just be watching over time.
Dr. Patel, really good insight. Thank you so much. Well, in a victory for the president on Capitol Hill, the House passed legislation requested by Mr. Trump to rescind funding for foreign aid and also public broadcasting. So House Republicans approved this bill. It actually claws back a total of $9 billion. It includes about $1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That is what funds NPR and PBS. The other $8 billion there comes from cuts to foreign aid, and the bill now heads to President Trump's desk. We have NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin. Here's the twist, though. She's in studio with us. Julie, good morning. Great to have you here in New York with us. So first, just walk us through how this bill passed and talk about the impact of what is being cut here.
Yeah, Savannah, so good to be in studio with you. There was a very late night on Capitol Hill. I was not there. I was traveling here, but our colleagues covered this vote, and we keep getting used to these late nights on the Hill because President Trump is putting so much pressure on Republicans to get his agenda done. So what this package does is exactly what you laid out. Congress appropriates funds. They have the power of the purse. In this very unusual case, the president and the executive branch asked them to essentially claw that money back, to undo the money they already appropriated. So now you have these $9 billion in cuts for foreign aid programs with the WHO, the USAID, the UN. PEPFAR, though, was saved from this program, about $400 million. Republicans told the president they're not going to agree to cut, and that was, of course, signed into law by President Bush in 2003 and had tremendous success. But there are still real concerns about the cuts Congress did make in this package. 2 Republicans voted against it in both the Senate and the House, Savannah. And this is not the last package that the president's going to request Congress to cut.
And remind everyone what PEPFAR is and why we think that survived.
So PEPFAR is the program that protected millions from contracting HIV and AIDS. It protected the kids and the children of people who had it. And this was such a successful program. It is actually billed as the most successful global health program ever. And we already saw some controversy surrounding it, with the Republicans in Congress delaying approving the funds for it because of some abortion concerns, especially in Africa. And so now you have this situation where some Republicans push back successfully to save it. But again, this is not the end of the road for these rescissions. The administration is going to keep asking Congress to do more to try and cut into some of the deficits they say we have.
Switching gears, Julie, yesterday we had talked about, I think it was yesterday, about this, it's been a long week, this hearing for this controversial judicial nominee for President Trump. And we did see yesterday some Senate Democrats stage these walkouts here. Tell us about this.
This was so unusual. I actually had to look up on my screen when I saw Cory Booker speaking and Chuck Grassley, the top Republican, talking over him. Democrats really tried to slow walk the nomination of Emil Bovee. He's somebody who's been close to the president. He was his defender in court during some of his prosecutions, especially in New York. And so he is somebody the Democrats said is not qualified for this job. He's somebody who whistleblowers alleged told the president and the administration to ignore court orders. And Democrats had big concerns. Republicans pushed ahead with the votes anyway. Booker was talking over Grassley while the votes were happening. Democrats walked out of the room. There were some questions whether the votes were approved in committee since Democrats weren't in there. But the full Senate is going to vote on his nomination, and Republicans are in control, so it's probably going to pass.
One other thing I want to ask you about, especially because I think there could be some headlines coming out of this. NBC News is learning that Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan is expected to be deposed today. This is part, though, of a much broader lawsuit. It alleges that he failed to protect wrestlers from a sexual predator when he was a coach at Ohio State University. Jordan, though, is not the target of this lawsuit, but it is the first time that he's going to be answering questions under oath about it. What can you tell us about this? What are we hearing from Jordan, and what exactly is his piece of this puzzle?
So way before he got into politics, I know you probably know him from being that gangbuster kind of defender for the president on the Hill. He's very aggressive when he chairs hearings. He's a chairman of powerful committees, including the Judiciary Committee in the House currently. And so in this situation, Jordan is not a defendant in this case, but he is going to take the stand. He used to be a wrestling coach decades ago in the late 80s, early 90s at Ohio State University. And there's a situation where wrestlers there, both non-athletes and students, by the way, athletes and students alike are concerned about these allegations of sexual abuse that happen at the school, particularly to these wrestling students who were wrestling at the school. And Jordan, for his part, a spokesperson, says, as everyone knows, Chairman Jordan never saw or heard of any abuse, and if he had, he would have dealt with it. Jordan has always said that he was not aware that any abuse was going on. Again, he's not in trouble here in terms of being named as a defendant, but he's definitely somebody they have questions for. I assume Jordan is going to stick to that line, though.
Yeah. All right. Julie Sirkin, thanks. Great to have you here in New York with us.
Thank you.
Well, a federal judge is considering an unusual recommendation from the Justice Department. Prosecutors want a one-day sentence for former Louisville police officer Brett Hankison. He was convicted of violating the civil rights of Breonna Taylor during the botched raid that led to her death in 2020. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley has more on this and a warning. Some of the images you see may be disturbing.
The Justice Department essentially wants no prison time for a conviction that could carry up to life in prison, instead asking for just 1 day for the only person convicted after firing shots into the home of 26-year-old Breonna Taylor. Taylor, an EMT from Louisville killed by police after a controversial 2020 no-knock warrant that's since become illegal in her home state of Kentucky, her death becoming a national outrage, amplifying a call to action at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. Two former Louisville Police Department officers who fired the shots that hit and killed Taylor never faced charges, a decision at the time defended.
The use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves.
And ridiculed.
Breonna Taylor and her family deserved justice yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Only one officer at that raid went to trial, Brett Hankison.
Defendant Brett Hankison not guilty.
Ultimately found not guilty on 3 state charges, but guilty on a federal charge last November for violating Taylor's civil rights. Prosecutors say Hankison fired 10 shots into Taylor's home, bullets flying through the walls and glass. Those shots from his gun did not hit Taylor. In a new sentencing memo, the Justice Department cites that fact in asking for a 1-day sentence, saying there is, quote, no need for a prison sentence to protect the public from the defendant, adding that the federal conviction will ensure Hankison never serves as a law enforcement officer again, and will also likely ensure that he never legally possesses a firearm again. That memo, submitted by the head of DOJ's Civil Rights Division, initially established by Congress to protect the rights of Black Americans during the Civil Rights era, but has seen a wave of resignations during the Trump administration. And it's now prioritizing alleged violation of Second Amendment gun rights, transgender policies, and anti-Semitism on college campuses, according to internal memos obtained by NBC News in April.
And this division is once again working as it should for all Americans.
Breonna Taylor's family and lawyer did not immediately respond to NBC News' request for comment. But the Democratic congressman in Louisville reacting, saying the one-day recommendation is, quote, morally reprehensible and deeply insulting, as the focus of civil rights shift in the new administration.
Our thanks to Ryan Riley for that report. Well, sentencing in this case is expected to happen on Monday. Well, this summer, does it not just seem like we have had wave after wave of severe weather? And today's no different. Along the Gulf Coast, the threat from that tropical disturbance, we had our eye on this yesterday. Well, it was downgraded today, but we have still been seeing heavy downpours in parts of the South and the Midwest, and it's triggering flooding in places like Kansas City, Missouri. That's what you're seeing right here on your screen. This is from yesterday. These wet conditions could also continue into the weekend. And this comes as millions of Americans are then feeling the heat today, with temperatures soaring across parts of the country. NBC News correspondent George Solis has the latest from waterlogged Louisiana.
Good morning. Residents here in New Orleans and surrounding region breathing a sigh of relief that the tropical moisture that was expected to dump inches and inches of rain was not more severe. Now, it's not to say that some communities did not get hit with several inches of water. In fact, one or two just west of the city here in New Orleans did see some significant flooding, maybe 4, 5, 6 inches. Residents we spoke with say, look, we're expecting this to recede fairly quickly, but the water did linger a little bit longer than they would have liked. Now, moving into the weekend, it's still going to be soggy and hot for millions. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Yesterday, we also were able to speak with a survivor of that lightning strike in New Jersey who says, fortunately, he does not remember anything, but he did know that victim that passed away. It was very traumatic for him. He's hoping to be home now, recovering from first-degree burns. Again, back here in New Orleans and surrounding region, they are still looking at the potential of some more rain this weekend. So not completely out of the woods, but again, looking around at some of the wet streets here, they're just grateful the flooding here was not more severe. Back to you.
George, thank you so much. Well, now let's turn to NBC meteorologist Angie Lassman for the latest on that heavy rain and the flood risks in the South and the Mid-Atlantic. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. We head into the weekend with more severe potential when it comes to strong storms as well as flooding threats. So here's the lay of the land right now. Notice these scattered storms that are, yes, across parts of the South. We've got a bit in the plains, some of that working across the Ohio Valley. And these are just some locations that we're expecting to see potentially some flooded streets and maybe some stronger storms develop. Right now, 17 million people under these flood alerts stretching from the coast back towards Kentucky. We've got parts of the central Gulf Coast still under these alerts as well. And these are going to last through the day today as we gear up for additional rainfall on those already saturated grounds. So across parts of the South, the Gulf Coast specifically, that's where you'll see the potential for more of that localized flooding that you just heard George talking about. But the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Southeast are also going to get in on those downpours as well. So we'll see some localized flooding there. Tomorrow, looking ahead to your Saturday, it's the Great Lakes and parts of the Midwest that we'll see dealing with the potential for some of those showers and thunderstorms. Today, the flash flood risk we're most concerned about is centered across the Mid-Atlantic. We've got really saturated grounds from those recent rains, and we've got the potential to see some pretty good rainfall rates in a couple throughout the day per hour. So we could see up to 3 inches per hour. That's a potential just west of Washington, D.C. So heads up for that. This will be something you deal with through the day today. And on top of that, the chance for some stronger storms. We've got all the impacts on the table today for 9 million people. And tomorrow, an even larger chunk of the country is going to deal with those. 41 million people stretching from New York to Iowa, including Detroit, Chicago, Indianapolis, all have the chance to see some of those stronger storms, Savannah. So it'll be another weekend where you'll want to have a way to get those weather alerts because, again, lots on the table.
Such a good point and an important one after what we've seen happen lately.
Yeah.
Angie, thank you so much. Well, we're learning new details in a shocking murder that rocked a small town in May earlier this month. Yesterday, police arrested a teenager in connection with the homicide of a 48-year-old paddleboarder whose body was found at the water's edge. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has the latest on the details on the arrest.
A shocking development in the killing of Sunshine Stewart. A 17-year-old male is now in custody in connection with her homicide. The much-loved local was found dead near a campsite in the quiet town of Union, Maine. Police also confirming the 48-year-old was killed by strangulation and blunt force trauma. The news leaving close friend Chloe Keller stunned.
That's inconceivable. I can't imagine being that age and making that choice to harm another human being.
Police say the 17-year-old was arrested without incident in Union late last night. They've yet to release his identity, pointing to his status as a minor, saying in a statement that the teen has been transported to a youth development center in South Portland.
Just for search purposes, she is very experienced on the water with a paddleboard.
According to police, Stewart's body was located during a search of Crawford Pond on July 3rd, last seen paddleboarding the evening before. A public safety official told local newspaper Midcoast Villager Stewart's paddleboard was found by drone on an island called 100 Acre. Her body was next to it where the water met the shore.
When a community that's been safe for time immemorial has its innocence robbed of it, it does shake the foundation of comfort and safety.
What do you want to see happen next?
I think everyone, all of us who knew and loved her, need to gather and be together and celebrate her. She was beloved, profoundly beloved by everyone I knew who knew her.
Erin McLaughlin, NBC News.
Well, next week, Brian Kohberger will be sentenced for the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students after pleading guilty. In anticipation of that, Judge Stephen Hippler has lifted a sweeping gag order in the case. This just happened yesterday. The order banned police, prosecutors, and witnesses from speaking out about the case that captured national attention for 2.5 years. Well, the plea deal shields Kohberger from the death penalty. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas joins us now with more on this. Danny, good morning. So let's start just with more on what lifting this gag order ultimately means. What does it open up in the case? What might we hear?
Here's what it opens up, and here's what it doesn't open up. The gag order prevented litigants from speaking about the case and people associated with them. So now, presumably, if those people want to speak, they can. What it didn't address is something separate but related, the sealing of documents. And there are probably hundreds of documents in the court file that are sealed. The judge is still going to go through those and determine which of them will be unsealed. And that means basically available to the public in the courthouse. Some may remain sealed due to privacy reasons, but in all likelihood, many of those will be unsealed because the default rule, courts are supposed to be public. Sealing is supposed to be the exception, not the rule. So the only thing the gag order does is prevent people from speaking. That's been lifted because there's no chance of tainting any jury because there never will be a jury.
And Danny, what might the judge decide to keep sealed? Why would he make that decision?
I would imagine something that is especially private or something that that might be, under the statutory grounds for sealing, which generally relate to things like privacy or something that is very harmful. It would have to be, I'd have to see the documents or get an idea. But so many have been sealed. And in my personal view, probably too many, even though this is such a gruesome, tragic case. I would expect, this is a second judge now looking at the sealing, I expect there's going to be a lot of documents unsealed, and probably there's going to be only a minority that may remain sealed.
Danny, I'm wondering, you imagine that prior to, had this actually gone to trial, it may be good for Kohberger's case that some of this stays sealed, it stays away from public attention. But then I'm also thinking that now that this is the outcome that we're seeing here, that he's taken this plea deal, for the families, do they want more information out there? Do they want to be reliving what happened to their children? Because it's, of course, going to become national conversation if there is anything new in any of this that comes out. What do you take away from that? Who does this sort of help? Who does this hurt? And what might we hear in the coming days?
One of the things this case highlights is that it's long been the rule that families of victims and victims themselves do not control litigation. They can be heard. They have a statutory right to be heard in many states and under some federal laws, but they don't control what the judge does with things like very private or very damaging or hurtful or tragic information that's contained in sealed court files. So while they may be heard, they ultimately cannot control. And this case is a great example because you have families of victims who have very divergent views on things like the level to which Kohberger should have gone to trial or the level to which documents should be made public.
Danny, we're just a few days away from Kohberger's sentencing. What can we expect there?
Virtually nothing in terms of varying from the sentencing. It's pretty much etched in stone. He's going to get multiple consecutive life sentences and then an additional 10 years for the burglary. There appears to be little change. The judge could theoretically vary from that, but probably will not. This will be more important for the opportunity for the victims' families to be heard. And they have not only a statutory right to be heard in Idaho, but a constitutional, state constitutional right to be heard. So I expect we will be hearing from those families, and it will be a very sad day for all.
Danny Ceballos, appreciate you following this for us. Thank you. We've got surprising news to tell you about. This is coming out of CBS this morning. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert is being canceled, ending its run in May of next year. Colbert made the announcement at the beginning of last night's show. In a statement, the network says it is pulling the plug for financial reasons, but some are questioning the timing after Colbert recently criticized the $16 million settlement CBS parent company Paramount made with President Trump ahead of a pending merger with Skydance. Well, The Late Show debuted with David Letterman, and that was back in 1993. We have much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a troubling trend. Cancers that affect the digestive system are on the rise among younger Americans. The warning from doctors on what you can do to stay healthy. But up first, after the break, outrage in the Middle East and beyond after an Israeli strike on Gaza's only Catholic church. Stay with us. We're back now with the deadly strike on the only Catholic church in Gaza that's prompted international outrage. The church was hit by an Israeli tank shell that resulted in the deaths of 3 people and injured several others, including the parish priest. Well, the attack prompted a rebuke from President Trump, who personally called Israel's prime minister to condemn the strike. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley has the details.
A look at the damage to Gaza's only Catholic church after it was struck by Israeli artillery. The building still standing, but church officials say 3 people were killed. 2 of them buried their funerals at the neighboring Greek Orthodox church. As they were leaving after finishing their prayer, they were targeted, said this man who was sheltering in the church. The strike prompting a call and criticism from President Trump.
What is the president's reaction to that church coming under fire?
It was not a positive reaction. He called Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning to address the strikes on that church in Gaza.
The IDF says fragments from a tank shell fired nearby hit the church mistakenly. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying Israel deeply regrets that its stray ammunition hit Gaza's Holy Family Church. Every innocent life lost is a tragedy. We share the grief of the families and the faithful. Among the lately injured was the parish priest, Father Gabriele Romanelli. It was Father Romanelli who the late Pope Francis called every day in the months before he died to check up on the church and the tiny Catholic community here as it kept its faith under fire.
Our thanks to Matt Bradley for that report. Well, Pope Leo responded to the strike, calling it a military attack on the church, saying he was deeply saddened. He also renewed his call for an immediate ceasefire. We have developing news this morning out of Russia. Its defense ministry says its forces have destroyed a wave of Ukrainian drones. NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us live with more details on other world news in 60 seconds. Claudio, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Well, that's right. Russia's defense ministry said at least 73 Ukrainian drones were shot down overnight, including 3 heading for Moscow. Now, there were no reports of casualties or damage, but operations at 2 airports near Russia's capital and 1 in St. Petersburg were all temporarily suspended and reinstated later this morning. There was no immediate comment by Ukraine on the attacks. Let's go now to Pakistan, where the monsoon killed at least 63 people in the last 24 hours, bringing the total death toll since the heavy rain started 3 weeks ago to at least 178. Pakistan's meteorological department said the country experienced 82% more rainfall compared to the same period last year. And let's end this tour of the world in South Korea, where a new K-pop group called OneVerse has released its album today, but it's not your typical K-pop band. 2 of its members are North Korean defectors, 2 are from Arkansas and Los Angeles, and the last one is from Japan. The 2 defectors said they could not listen to K-pop while growing up in North Korea because it's illegal there. Well, now they're both on their way to K-pop stardom. Incredible story.
Wow, it really is an incredible story. Claudio, thank you so much. Coming up, a controversial new strategy in the fight against America's drug crisis. Some clinics now paying meth addicts to stay clean. A look at the plan and its effectiveness next on Morning News Now. We are back with an alarming new report. It is troubling doctors. It shows cases of gastrointestinal cancers are rapidly growing in people under 50 years old. In fact, GI cancers are increasing faster than any other type of early onset cancer in the U.S. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson spoke to one doctor about what's contributing to this concerning rise.
Chemotherapy round 5 starts today.
This is not the trend Mark Sevillano Jr. wants to set.
Have you ever heard of esophageal cancer?
At 40, he was diagnosed with stage 2 esophageal cancer.
Let's put it this way, I'm still processing it today.
It is a gastrointestinal or GI cancer, the fastest rising type of cancer in people under 50 in the U.S. and around the world. They include colorectal, gastric, pancreatic, and esophageal cancers, increasing 2% a year. The findings published in JAMA. Dana-Farber's Dr. Kimmy Eng co-authored the review.
What's driving the increase?
So that is the question of the century. We currently do not know what is driving the rising rates of gastrointestinal cancers in young people.
They do know 1/3 have a hereditary factor. Among other risk factors, obesity, poor diet, including ultra-processed foods, and sedentary lifestyle.
We also need to start looking at other novel environmental exposures, such as things in the air, such as chemicals in our food, and things like microplastics.
Now cancer-free, Mark is urging his followers to be aware.
Cancer could happen to anybody at any age, at any time. If you feel like something is wrong, please go get checked.
Because early detection can save lives. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Let's stay with health news now. When it comes to fighting drug abuse, one of the most difficult addictions is methamphetamine. Unlike other drugs, there's no medical treatment available that actually counteracts those intense cravings that users have. And its use is on the rise across the country. Well, today, we're taking a look at a startling, somewhat controversial approach to fighting this addiction. It centers around incentives, and it's called contingency management. Here's kind of how it works. So when patients of a clinic, if they stay clean and their testing proves it when they come, they are rewarded with things like a debit card loaded with cash or a prize. New York Times health reporter Jen Hoffman joins me now. She covers drug addiction and health law, and she wrote this recent article. The headline here was, "It's upended by meth. Some communities are paying users to quit." Jan, good morning. This headline certainly caught my attention. We appreciate your time and you joining us this morning. First, if you could just walk us through how contingency management works and what the data is showing about its effectiveness.
Okay. First, just for the sake of not putting everyone to sleep, let's just call it CM. This was not a triumph of branding. It has actually been around for quite a while. It's just that its adoption is really gaining traction. The VA has been using it since at least 2011. The idea of it is that meth can give someone an extraordinary hit of dopamine. So how do you compete with that? You can't do it medically. The idea is to try to generate those feelings of well-being and happiness on your own. So what happens is someone comes in, if they test negative, if their urine tests negative, they get a small reward. It's almost like a pat on the back. And they see, and they get a burst of satisfaction, encouragement. And each time they come in successively, that amount rises. It starts very small and it really never gets very large, but people come in for that encouragement, for that feeling of well-being, for that feeling of healing. And frankly, the longer one is abstinent from meth, the ability to sleep gets better, the ability to eat gets better, and your feeling of normalcy, of returning to a life that is not infused with drugs improves. And so the benefits accumulate along with the reward, whether it's a gift card to Dunkin' Donuts or another store of your choice. Those cards are, by the way, electronically protected against your ability to use them for alcohol, tobacco,
an important point,
and gambling. Yes,
certainly. Yes. And you mentioned in the article, and I think some viewers might be kind of like, what? How a lot of clinics were uneasy about this, the fact that it's this bluntly transactional nature. I actually want to read one expert that you quoted here put it, I thought, well, most people recoil at paying people to do the right thing. But we've got plenty of data that shows it works, so I think we have to bite the utilitarian bullet. Is this that successful that even if people feel uncomfortable about this nature of treating someone, that it really seems like the right way to go?
You know, it's not my position to give a position, but if you do the math, typically someone can earn at most the value of about $599 over the course of 6 months. When you put that against the cost of taking someone to an emergency room, hospital stays, police involvement, community disruption, as opposed to even developing a drug, which has simply not been possible so far. The question is, are you willing to pay that cost for the outcome? And in terms of success rates, contingency management, CM, is about 50% likely to succeed a year after someone completes treatment. Typically, one should understand that you go through the treatment, and as you become more used to being in recovery, you become more amenable to other interventions like social services, talk therapy, group therapy, and your life hopefully begins to improve. People sometimes drop out simply because they get jobs and they can't keep up the program. So other forms of treatment for meth, which can be talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, if you use them just alone, the success rate is much, much smaller.
And Jen, quickly, I thought it was quite interesting also to learn in an article that this is starting more and more to be covered by insurance.
Yes, private companies are beginning to pay for this within, even Fortune 500 companies. So, for example, CM can be used for meth, it can be used for gambling, it can be used to treat alcohol addiction. This notion of positive reinforcement, you did well, let me give you a reward, is something that many people can aspire to.
Jan Hoffman, fascinating article, really important stuff. Thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, Savannah.
Coming up, denied and devastated. Americans fighting back over denied insurance claims.
Did you feel like you were being treated as human beings?
Absolutely not. Just a number.
Yeah, no name, no face kind of thing.
Up next, how AI is being used to fight back against health insurance companies. This is Morning News Now. We're back with a frustrating challenge that millions of Americans deal with every year: denied health insurance claims. A 2023 study shows that nearly 1 in 5 adults had their insurance company deny coverage or a claim. I'm one of them. The majority of people did not know, though, that they could appeal. Well, now more people are turning to artificial intelligence to help them fight back. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung shows us how it works.
I basically avoided stairs.
Yeah.
If I could.
That's because every step was grueling for Stephanie Nixdorf. In Davidson, North Carolina, her morning routine nearly impossible to get through without pain. She had to ask for help just to open a juice container.
So even that was something you couldn't do 6 months ago?
Oh, yeah, no.
In 2022, Stephanie was diagnosed with stage 4 skin cancer. Luckily, she responded well to immunotherapy.
But the flip side of that is that there are side effects.
For Stephanie, that meant excruciating joint pain. 2 doctors recommended the infusion medication infliximab, but her insurance denied coverage.
I remember getting on the phone and yelling at the insurance company. And
yelled at the insurance?
Yeah, just,
Stephanie's husband, Jason, furious when he saw the denial letter from Premera Blue Cross, which had covered her cancer care, saying the services requested don't meet guidelines for coverage and called the use of infliximab experimental. 2 appeals were also denied.
Did you feel like you were being treated as human beings?
Absolutely not. Just a number.
Yeah, no name, no face kind of thing.
Yeah, Gmail.
Desperate, Jason turned to artificial intelligence.
You get to the point of where, okay, this is our last hope.
He had come across a doctor developing an AI tool to take on insurance companies. That doctor helped him use AI to generate an appeal letter for Stephanie more than 20 pages long. Within 48 hours of sending in that version, along with copies to public officials,
Right up top, your appeal was approved.
Despite the 3 previous denials for Stephanie, Premera Blue Cross now tells NBC News that the denial of service came from a Premera processing error involving a misapplication of policy. There was no intent to deny care. The ultimate approval letter from Premera said, "I want to apologize that you have been waiting to receive treatment for 9 months."
Now there are AI services specifically designed for insurance denials.
Introducing Claimable.
One of them, Claimable, says it can generate appeal letters for coverage of 70 medications for a cost of about $40.
Climbing stairs and stuff like that.
Climbing stairs are hard.
We tested it with Jason, plugging in insurance information and using drop-down menus to explain symptoms and the deny claim.
So I will hit continue.
In about 15 minutes, I had an expansive appeals letter, complete with scientific references and personal stories.
These are things I would never have thought of.
The Nixdorfs credit AI with Stephanie finally getting the drugs she needed, but they're left frustrated it took so much time.
If you could talk to the CEO of the insurance company, what would you say?
I would say, what if this was your wife?
Yeah.
And this was happening to you?
Yeah. Or your daughter or your sister.
That message from a couple that says they had to use artificial intelligence to be treated like real people. Brian Chung, NBC News.
Important report there. Thanks to Brian. Well, let's stay with Money News for a check at what's making headlines on Wall Street, starting with a first-of-its-kind victory for the crypto industry. CNBC's Silvana Henao has more on that, plus some other Money News. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Happy Friday to you. Well, the House passing a bill to regulate stablecoins. It's the first major cryptocurrency measure approved by Congress. The Genius Act, which was already passed by the Senate, that would regulate tokens that are pegged to assets such as the dollar. Now, this will pave the way for banks to launch their own digital assets. Earlier this week, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon said the company was going to be involved in both JP Morgan branded deposit coins and stable coins. Meanwhile, Union Pacific is reportedly in talks to buy Norfolk Southern in a deal that could create the nation's largest railroad operator. The Union Pacific has a market value of about $140 billion, while Norfolk is valued at $61 billion. Now, a combined company would handle a sizable share of freight shipped in the U.S. with a network coast to coast. Any deal would face serious scrutiny from federal regulators and labor unions. And Disney's live-action remake of Lilo & Stitch tops $1 billion at the global box office, the first movie to do so this year. The original animated movie, which came out in 2002, was only a modest success at the time, bringing in $273 million. But the Stitch character has become more popular since ranking in the top 10 of the best-selling Disney franchises. Sales of Stitch-themed merchandise bringing in about $2.6 billion last year, Savannah.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, huge.
That is huge. Silvana, thank you.
Sure.
Well, coming up, a big birthday celebration for a very small price.
Pretzel at Wetzel's Pretzels. Apple pie from Popeyes. A Baja Blast Freeze at Taco Bell.
Up next, we'll introduce you to a man who spent his special day cashing in on all the freebies he could find. We'll join the party next on Morning News Now. We're ending this hour with a celebration. It's a pretty popular trend for companies to treat their customers to small giveaways when it's their birthday, right? Well, NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal is introducing us to one birthday boy who took full advantage of his special day with a freebie frenzy.
Let me show you everyone getting free food today on my birthday.
Full price is for quitters.
Free pretzel at Wetzel's Pretzels. Apple pie from Popeyes. A Baja Blast Freeze at Taco Bell. We got a small orange chicken this year.
Because there's always a deal Clint Savatos can help you find.
Only paid $1 for the $6 taco.
Especially on your birthday.
I'm always looking for a deal. I'm always looking to save money. 6 lemon pepper wings at Buffalo Wild Wings.
As the Wall Street Journal reported, this trend is on the rise. He's one of many on social media competing for free treats and even meals.
This thing is ginormous. Free Whopper at Burger King.
The preparation takes months, and when others are making wish lists, Clint is making spreadsheets.
And there's no way I could get it all done without being organized.
For this year's birthday, more than 38 stops, 18,000 steps, and less than $25 spent. but impossible to do alone.
I had to call in to help for these birthday rewards.
Is it fun or does it feel like work?
I think it's a lot of fun. Getting free guacamole is fantastic.
Clint's goal for next year is more than 40 freebies. But in the meantime,
free coffee.
Oh, I'm so excited.
He's still cashing in the deals.
It's better when it's free.
Oh, everything's better when it's free. Thanks for all the birthday wishes.
Camila Bernal, NBC News, Los Angeles.
So much fun. That's going to do it for this hour of morning news. Now stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning and good news. Yes, it's Friday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's off today. Right now on Morning News Now, yet another bombshell from the White House in the case of Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump facing mounting pressure from his base, now saying he'll release some parts of the grand jury testimony from the Epstein case. But it's being eclipsed by a stunning new report from the Wall Street Journal alleging Mr. Trump wrote a letter to Mr. Epstein more than 20 years ago, which included a drawing of a naked woman. The commander-in-chief angrily denying the report as fresh concerns come to light over his health. We are following it all. Also this morning, a sweltering summer slam from Mother Nature baking millions of Americans from coast to coast, including right here in New York. While down south and across the Midwest, relentless rains and dangerous flash floods are leaving some communities underwater. Our Angie Lastman has your weekend forecast. Plus, a late-night legend set to take his final bow. Comedian Stephen Colbert announcing an end to CBS's The Late Show and his decade-long reign as host. The stunning move being blamed on a tough financial climate by executives at the network. We've got more later in the hour. And of course, if it's Friday, that can only mean one thing. We've got your front row seat to the latest and greatest from the world of Hollywood and beyond. Everything you simply can't miss this weekend. Thanks for joining us this Friday morning. We are going to begin this hour with those new questions about President Trump's past relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The president is denying a report. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It's about a letter he allegedly wrote to Epstein more than 2 decades ago. According to documents reviewed by the Journal, the letter reportedly including an outline of a naked woman. Now, NBC News has not independently verified or seen the letter, but the president is now threatening legal action. This all comes as Mr. Trump has directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce, quote, pertinent testimony tied to the Epstein case. The president has been facing pressure by members of his own party to make those files public. NBC's Ryan Nobles has the latest developments from Washington.
This is a dramatic shift for the president, who had dismissed the Epstein controversy and called his supporters focused on it stupid and foolish. The question this morning, will the limited release of information he's asked to be made public be enough to satisfy those who want to know everything about the Epstein saga? This morning, a surprising move from President Trump, under pressure from his base.
This has been the first fracture in MAGA.
Trump saying that he wants to release some of the documents related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein after days of dismissing the controversy.
The credible information's been given. It's pretty boring stuff. It's all been a big hoax.
But now President Trump posting overnight, quote, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. Bondi responding, saying we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. The announcement coming just hours after a report from the Wall Street Journal describing an album prepared by Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, for his 50th birthday back in 2003. According to documents reviewed by the Journal, the album contained letters from Trump and dozens of Epstein's other friends and associates. The newspaper, citing people who have seen the album, report its pages were reviewed by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, though it's not clear if any of the pages were part of the Trump administration's recent review. NBC News has not independently verified those documents. The Journal reports the letter bearing Trump's name is bawdy, with several lines of text framed by the hand-drawn outline of a naked woman, with Mr. Trump's alleged signature below the waist. The text consists of an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein, with dialogue alluding to the two men having, quote, certain things in common, and concluding, happy birthday, may every day be another wonderful secret. President Trump vehemently denies writing the letter or drawing the picture, telling the Journal, this is not me, this is a fake thing, it's a fake Wall Street Journal story. Adding, I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words. Overnight, the president saying he will sue the Journal and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, calling the story false, malicious, and defamatory. The publisher of the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, declined to comment on the president's response on social media, while the Justice Department has not responded to the Wall Street Journal report, and the FBI has declined to comment.
Ryan, thank you so much. Well, meanwhile, the White House is opening up about a recent medical diagnosis for President Trump. It said the president has chronic venous insufficiency. It's a common condition in people over 70. It impacts the veins. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us with the latest on that. Gabe, good morning. What more are we learning here?
Hey there, Savannah. Good morning. It is a common condition, especially in older adults, that occurs when veins have trouble moving blood back to the heart. Now, the White House press secretary disclosing the diagnosis unprompted during a briefing yesterday, saying the president was evaluated in recent weeks.
After these images of President Trump started to draw attention, apparent swelling in his ankles and bruises on his hands covered with makeup, the White House delivering a health update Thursday, revealing he's been diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency, a swelling of the legs caused by blood pooling in the veins.
9 in common condition, particularly in individuals over the age of 70. Importantly, there was no evidence of deep vein thrombosis or arterial disease.
The administration releasing this physician's letter that notes an echocardiogram was also performed and confirmed normal cardiac structure and function. No signs of heart failure, renal impairment, or systemic illness were identified, adding the president remains in excellent health. Symptoms of chronic venous insufficiency can include pins and needles in the legs, discolored skin, or in rare cases, ulcers near the ankles. The president is 79 and is known for staying on his feet.
No discomfort from the president at all, and you probably all see that on a day-to-day basis. He's working around the clock.
The White House also providing an update after photos of bruising on the president's hands emerged, seen in February during a meeting with the French president, and this week a camera captured it as he was speaking to reporters. The White House physician says it's consistent with minor soft tissue irritation from frequent handshaking and the use of aspirin taken as a standard cardiovascular prevention regimen. The White House pointing to his lengthy receiving lines, including on this recent trip to the Middle East.
I shook more hands than any human being is capable of doing. That was a long deal, and they were big people.
A White House official tells NBC News that there will be no changes to the president's schedule or lifestyle, and that he won't be taking steps like wearing compression socks or putting his feet up on an ottoman to relieve swelling. Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much. Well, all across the country, people cannot seem to catch a break from the extreme summer weather. Today, millions of Americans will be feeling the heat with temperatures soaring, and we're still seeing heavy downpours in parts of the South and the Midwest. Chicago living up to its nickname with 60-mile-per-hour winds whipping through the city. Yesterday, cleanup crews sawed through branches from downed trees and surveyed the damage to homes. NBC News correspondent George Solis has been tracking all this extreme weather for us from New Orleans, where the rain there has just been relentless. George, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. Yeah, residents in New Orleans actually breathing a little bit of a relief because the severe weather brought on by that tropical moisture was not as severe as anticipated. That's not to say, though, that some communities were not inundated with water. In fact, several west of the city saw several inches. Now, fortunately, that has started to recede, but unfortunately, the threat of severe weather not over. Millions still under flood watches and that oppressive heat.
This morning, many Americans waking up to more storms and flood warnings, and 17 million under flood watch, ready for another soggy weekend in a summer full of them. Heavy downpours overnight from the south, drenching Arkansas, Florida, and Louisiana, where water flooded some streets, to the Midwest. This RV camper washed away by quick rising waters in Indiana.
Trying to figure out a way to get her back over here.
Thankfully, no one was inside. While in Illinois, rivers overrunning their banks.
Well, welcome to Lake Marissa.
As you can see, everything is flooded.
Kansas City recovering after seeing a month's worth of rain in just 24 hours that turned small creeks into raging torrents of water, washing away property and submerging multiple vehicles. Ruidoso, New Mexico, the site of deadly flash floods just more than a week ago, dealing with more rapidly rising floodwaters. Other parts of the country baking in the hot sun. A heat wave causing sweltering conditions from the south to the northeast, with some 10 million people under heat alerts. High temps and high humidity making it feel like 110 degrees in some places.
Too hot. That's too hot.
Community centers doing their best to help kids beat the heat.
We want to see our kids happy and enjoying this moment. It's what we do the job for.
As millions prepare for a hot and soggy weekend ahead.
Yeah, Savannah, as I'm joining you, the rain again starting here in New Orleans. And this is something that folks are going to be keeping a close watch on because there's still flood watches in effect for the central Gulf Coast. The other part of this, again, the heat. It has actually been very humid here in New Orleans, but some good news for you there in New York. The heat wave there in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic finally starting to break. Savannah?
That is a little bit of good news, George, but so much going on around the country. Thank you so much. Well, parts of the South and the Mid-Atlantic, they're still under flood watches, as we heard. Let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather. Angie Lastman is tracking these downpours for us. Angie, good morning.
Hi there, Savannah. Good morning to you. It wouldn't be the weekend if we didn't have some impactful weather to highlight as we roll into our Saturday and Sunday plans. Here's the deal right now. We've got some of these showers across parts of the Ohio Valley, back through the Central Plains, and then, yes, across parts of the Gulf Coast. And those are going to be there here through the day today. And so not surprising that we have these flood alerts that are up for 17 million people right now. Much of those extend into the Mid-Atlantic and, of course, the Gulf Coast, because we do just have those really saturated grounds and already have had ample amounts of rain in some of those spots, with more on the way. Here's how it plays out today. It's going to be the scattered showers and thunderstorms across the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic, the Gulf Coast, and even the Midwest through the day today. We'll watch for the potential for flooding, of course, today and tomorrow. Notice that big batch of moisture that works along that cold front tomorrow across parts of the Great Lakes. We'll see the potential to see some of those thunderstorms kind of ramp up and potentially be strong to even severe. Today, though, really going to watch parts of the Mid-Atlantic for that moderate risk of flash flooding. We've got the saturated soil, so any additional rain going to be problematic, and we could see some really impressive hourly rainfall rates with this, up to 3 inches. So no surprise if we get the potential for some flash flooding across that area through the day today. On top of that, a couple of spots to watch for the stronger storms. I mentioned all of those impacts are going to be on the table for the Mid-Atlantic, for parts of the Midwest, Sioux Falls, Omaha, Norfolk, Raleigh, all included in that. And then tomorrow, that's centered across the Great Lakes and into the Ohio Valley. So if you live in Columbus, Detroit, Fort Wayne, Chicago, Des Moines, Milwaukee, all those locations, going to see the potential to see some of those thunderstorms ramp up and potentially become strong or severe. On top of that, it really feels like summer out there. We've got plenty of heat alerts up, and notice they're in effect for parts of South Florida as well now. That happened early this morning, but the Carolinas, back across parts of the Tennessee Valley and stretching to the south. 19 million people in total under these heat alerts, so gonna need to take it slow and find those cool spots once again in those locations today. But we've got a little bit of relief a little farther to the north. Savannah, temperatures only in the 80s in Boston, and then we kind of moderate out here as we get into our upcoming weekend.
Oh, all right. Angie Lastman, thank you so much. First. Well, now let's get to a major development in the Bryan Kohberger quadruple murder case. After 2.5 years and countless legal proceedings, an Idaho judge lifted a sweeping gag order on the case yesterday. This decision comes just days before Kohberger's sentencing. He pleaded guilty to all counts earlier this month. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz has been following this story and joins us from Los Angeles with more. Hi, Liz. Good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Yeah, that gag order was put in place as a way to ensure a fair trial. It strictly limited any public comment by attorneys, law enforcement, and witnesses involved. But now this new development paves the way to potentially learn more about the murders, with Bryan Kohberger's sentencing scheduled for next week.
This morning, a sweeping gag order lifted in Bryan Kohberger's quadruple murder case.
I think the rights of the public to information in this case is paramount, given the fact that a plea has been entered in this case.
The judge ruling the gag order isn't needed following Kohberger's confession to murdering University of Idaho students Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Ethan Chapin in 2022.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
With the trial no longer happening, a coalition of news organizations, including NBC News, asked the court to lift the order, which prohibited investigators and attorneys involved in the case from speaking publicly.
Now that Kohberger's pleaded guilty, there's not going to be a jury, so there's no jury pool to taint.
The gag order was issued early on amid intense media scrutiny and public interest in the case to ensure a fair trial.
Gag orders are incredibly rare in criminal trials. They're usually reserved for the most high-profile cases.
In an exclusive interview with Today, Ethan Chapin's parents, Jim and Stacy, told us the gag order served its purpose.
Was it good that there was this gag order? Did it let some of the theories spread?
Oh, I think the gag order was a good deal.
You could be angry over the gag order, or you could just understand that that's part of the legal process and how this is going to work, and you know, let those people do their job.
With the order now lifted, it's possible new and disturbing details about the brutal killings could come to light, something the Chapins were hoping to avoid.
We know what happened, you know, as far as he was concerned, and I don't need to know anything else.
And you don't think the public needs to know?
I know there's pieces of it they don't need to know. It's not for public consumption.
And why would you need to know it? I mean, what's the gain on that, right? There's zero gain.
Now, lifting the gag order does not immediately open up everything in the case, like the hundreds of sealed documents, and the judge says he isn't going to make any available until after Brian Kohberger's sentencing next week. It also doesn't require anyone who had been bound by the order to speak, and NBC News has reached out to the prosecution and the defense. So far, neither has commented. Savannah.
All right, Liz, thank you so much. Well, joining us now here on set are Kaylee Gonsalves' parents, Steve and Christy, and their attorney, Shannon Gray. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. First, I know it has been a big week, a lot of announcements, a lot of conversation, as we just saw there. How are y'all doing?
We're hanging in there.
Yeah. I just saw a little bit of your reaction to the Chapin family and kind of how they have felt about the plea deal, about the gag order. And I know that your reaction is different. I'll start on the plea deal. Tell me what you make of this, how your family is feeling about this.
We feel a little robbed. We didn't get any feedback on how this was going to occur, and he negotiated like a child. I mean, he didn't get anything other than a yes and a guilty, you know, and the kids deserve better than that. We just don't want to live this nightmare 10 years from now where people say he was assisted or he was just a driver or he was just part of it and he just had to plead. So we wanted it to be clear if this individual could have given some key details that would clear it up so everyone knew and it was just over and done with and we could just say, we've got the guy, shut up, no more conspiracies, let's move on. That's what we're hoping for.
Some allocution.
What outstanding questions did you have here that you think a trial could have helped clear up?
I don't know if it was necessarily questions, although, yes, but we were pretty sure, I mean, we felt very confident that a jury would convict him, and that's what we really wanted. You know, we felt if, you know, Ada County residents that sat in as a jury, they would convict him and they would sentence him to death.
Shannon, if I could bring you in here to touch on the gag order. I know, I believe, given what I understand your history to be and how you felt about the gag order, that you would want this information unsealed, but tell us what you think about what's happening and the questions you may still have as the judge is able to decide what actually does end up being for public consumption.
Well, there's really two aspects of it. You have the rulings and the filings with the court that the judge can unseal, and then you have the discovery in the case that all the prosecutors have. And we've had a meeting with the prosecutors already requesting a copy of that discovery. Because if you go through normal course, it's public records request to the, to the Moscow Police Department, FBI, it could take years. So we've requested a copy of that discovery. They'll have to redact some of the stuff, we know, but it's one of those things that we hope that they'll keep their promise and give us a copy of that discovery, because then it will be able to at least answer some questions, right? How the process went, what the investigation did, other things that they might have found out. So.
And Steve and Christy, how are you feeling about it being lifted?
We're glad. I do believe in protecting the witnesses and the victims with the gag order. I understand that. But we weren't happy that it was protecting the defendant, which, you know, evidence is the truth. Why were we hiding the truth? You know, we see a lot of cases happen across the United States, and we haven't seen this heavy of a gag order or even a gag order at all in most of these cases. So we were like, why our case and why all the hush-hush and protecting this defendant? Like I said, we felt different about the victims and the witnesses, but, I mean, why are we hiding the evidence?
Yeah, when you use a gag order, how it's not intended, it's a red flag, you know? And I think it was more about not wanting to be accountable to the media for decisions like destroying the crime scene, saying the house needs to go. It was a targeted event, isolated, all these things. They didn't want to be accountable for those things.
Sentencing coming up next week. How are you both feeling about that?
Well, we, not unless something out of the ordinary happens, but we already know what the judge is going to sentence him to. So we're really just there for the victim impact statements. But, I mean, he's already said 4 consecutive life sentences and 10 years for the burglary. So it's not like we're going to get a surprise there.
And the opportunity to give that victim impact statement, imagine it's, of course, a difficult moment, but maybe also a healing one. You are planning to give one?
Yes.
And how is that planning coming?
Well, I've wrote a million things out and tossed them and wrote a million more things out. So I'm back and forth. I'm still working on it. It is very emotional writing it, and you think it's perfect and that's it. That's what I'm going to say, and then you think of something else. So you got to tie it in there, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, we're writing them as a family. I've looked over Olivia's and she's looked over mine. So it's kind of a thing for a family to take a little bit of their power back, take a little bit of control back, you know, all the way up to his plea deal, not forcing him to compromise anything. We'll have to do that job. We'll have to take a little bit of that back and say, we're going to define Kaylee and who she was, not you.
Could you just tell us what you want Kaylee's legacy to be and what you want people right now this morning to know about her, to remember her as?
You?
No, yeah, Kaylee was just absolutely beautiful. She was funny, she was smart, she had huge goals in her life. She was going to do something big. You know, she didn't want to just sit back and let the world pass her by. She wanted to travel, and she really was getting ready to just take the big step into real adulthood. You know, no longer a student in college, and take that big job and start making things happen. And she was, you know, her beautiful smile, her laugh, she was everything.
Yeah. Steve, Christy, Shannon, thank you all so much for your time this morning. We appreciate you coming by. There is much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We are back now with some shocking news from the world of late night television. This morning, fans of The Late Show on CBS are reeling after host Stephen Colbert announced that the beloved program is ending altogether next year. NBC's entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas joins us with the latest. Hey, Chloe, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. This is shocking news for late night fans who were confused and angry about why would CBS pull the plug on such a popular show.
I want to let you know something that I found out just last night. Next year will be our last season.
Stephen Colbert's announcement sending shockwaves through the television world.
It's not just the end of our show, but it's the end of The Late Show on CBS. I'm not being replaced. This is all just going away.
It's a major shift in the late-night landscape and for the famous host. Colbert got his start on Comedy Central's The Daily Show and later won fans on the satirical Colbert Report before taking over the network's seat from David Letterman. And with the end of The Late Show, the end of an era.
It's The Late Show with David Letterman.
It debuted in 1993 with David Letterman at the storied Ed Sullivan Theater.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the show. My name is Dave.
Letterman hosted for more than 2 decades, sparking an intense late-night rivalry with The Tonight Show's Jay Leno.
and creating a string of iconic moments, from headline-grabbing celebrity interviews.
It's my birthday. You made it. Gosh, it was fun.
To musical performances.
I know someday you'll have a beautiful life.
To his famous top 10 lists.
The category, top 10 things never before said on The Sopranos.
After a long run, Letterman retired in 2015. Colbert moving into the spotlight, making his own mark with interviews, performances, and his signature political commentary.
But everybody I talk to is talking about what Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about. So let's talk about it.
Despite an overall decline in late-night ratings, Colbert had the #1 show for 9 straight seasons.
There's nobody bigger on CBS than Stephen Colbert right now, literally dropping their biggest star.
CBS executives saying in a statement, this is purely a financial decision against a challenging backdrop in late night. It is not related in any way to the show's performance, content, or other matters happening at Paramount. Colbert recently criticizing the $16 million settlement CBS's parent company Paramount made with President Trump ahead of a pending merger with Skydance. Last night's guest, Senator Adam Schiff, saying if Paramount and CBS ended the late show for political reasons, the public deserves to know and deserves better. Colbert thanking his 200-person staff, leaving fans to wonder what's next when the show ends in May of next year.
It is a fantastic job. I wish somebody else was getting it.
As for Colbert's next move, other hosts have found success beyond late night. Let's just take a look at David Letterman. He had his own show on Netflix, Conan O'Brien with a travel series on HBO Max. So we're all going to stay tuned to see what the next chapter will be for Colbert. But I can tell you one thing, Savannah, he always lands on his feet.
Yeah, and big people get their big stars start there, right? You intern there.
I interned for Stephen Colbert at Comedy Central, one of the nicest guys. And this 200-person staff, Savannah, a lot of them came from the Colbert Report at Comedy Central because they all say Stephen Colbert is the best boss.
I know, and he really shouted his team out, which was really cool in that announcement. Chloe, thank you so much. Texas bus drivers who are being hailed as heroes this morning, their selfless actions in the wake of those devastating Hill Country floods. That's next. A closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with a big win for President Trump in Congress. Back with us again this morning in studio, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin, off the Hill and here in New York with us. Julie, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. There's a lot of news from my usual post back over on Capitol Hill because that's where the House passed $9 billion in funding cuts as requested by the White House. Republicans voted largely along party lines to claw back billions in funding for foreign aid programs through groups like the World Health Organization and the United Nations, and significant cuts to public broadcasting here at home, PBS and NPR. They did reject, Republicans that is, a request to cut funding for PEPFAR, Savannah, credited as the most successful global health program ever, signed into law by President George W. Bush. It has saved millions of people from contracting HIV and AIDS, but still Democrats say Republicans broke what is supposed to be a bipartisan process, funding the government, as the president pushes ahead with plans to sign the cuts into law today. Speaking of signing bills into law, President Trump is also expected to sign a major cryptocurrency bill just passed by the House. The Genius Act will regulate issuers of stable coins. It's a digital asset usually pegged to the U.S. dollar. Supporters say this will help legitimize the industry and make it more mainstream. Crypto has already come such a long way. It's not this small, underground, under-the-radar industry anymore. So many people use it, and their lobbying efforts really paid off. Crypto groups have been all over the Capitol and even spending big in elections. In a big bipartisan vote, the House also passed a second crypto bill overnight, but the Senate still needs to vote on it. And let's stick with the Senate, because that is where Democrats stormed out of a Judiciary Committee meeting yesterday when it was time to vote on some of President Trump's judicial nominees. Over one of them, Emil Bovee. Republicans pushed forward with a committee vote anyway, but Senator Cory Booker asked for more time to debate Bovee's nomination. Democrats raised concerns over Bovee, who was President Trump's personal attorney, over some of his more controversial decisions at the DOJ, including a letter from a whistleblower last month who was fired from the Justice Department, alleging Bovee wanted the Trump administration to ignore court orders, especially in that deportations case. Republicans sent his nomination to the full Senate for a vote soon. And that is a look at what is making news in politics this morning. Savannah?
All right, Julie, so much going on. Thank you very much. Well, Well, 2 weeks ago, as flash floods swept through Texas's Kerr County, one group of bus drivers braved the floodwater and drove into danger to get children to safety. Those drivers now, of course, being hailed as heroes. Reporter Jordan Elder from our affiliate in San Antonio has the story.
Through raging waters and broken roads, Amanda Nicholson says there was only one option.
Our family was in trouble, and we were able to help in the best way that we could.
Full speed ahead behind the wheel of a school bus,
where we picked up a bunch of the Mystic girls that they had drove in from camp. All we knew is that we had a bunch of young girls holding each other's hands, waiting to get on our buses.
Amanda has her commercial driver's license to take her Tyvee High School volleyball team to and from games. On July 4th, the stakes were much higher.
A lot of these girls had pajamas on. A lot of them didn't have shoes. They had nothing but each other. And so that was a hard view in itself, that this happened while they were sleeping.
Millions of people across the world have seen this video. Girls from Camp Mystic singing on their way to safety. For Amanda, the journey was more somber. She watched as children ran off her bus and into the arms of their worried parents.
To see fear in everybody was extremely difficult. And it was extremely difficult to have some of those parents ask you when everybody got off your bus, is that it? Because they didn't see their child. And so that was really hard.
There are people who are calling you and the other bus drivers that went in there to help evacuate people heroes. Do you see it that way?
I think we just wanted to help our first responders, anybody that was chest deep, the family members who saved their family, those are heroes. The counselors, the people that gave their lives to save these kids, I mean, those are your heroes.
Her boss sees it differently.
They're heroes. They're heroes.
Ken Knowles was on a cruise when the floodwaters hit, but he says he wasn't surprised when he heard how his team responded.
Faster than I could possibly have imagined, we had buses on the road ready to rescue kids.
In total, 10 district buses brought about 900 campers to safety. These green bows will be waiting as bus drivers return to the barn in August, a way to honor the lives lost. And about that bus driver title,
I've told them that there's a saying that I'm going to ban from our department. I'm just a bus driver. They were comforters, they were rescuers, and in my mind, they're all heroes.
It's going to be hard, but we're strong and we're going to make it. And that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
Reporting in Kerrville, I'm Jordan Elder.
Wow, what a powerful report. They're certainly heroes. Well, coming up, there is a new push in Silicon Valley this morning looking to give babies a genetic edge. When Morning News Now returns, the science and the skepticism over one company's controversial embryo screening process. And spoiler alert, it is not cheap. We will explain up next. We are back with a controversial idea. It's gaining momentum, though, in the fertility and biotech space. This is screening embryos for hundreds of genetic conditions. It is a process that has been described as breeding so-called super babies. The Silicon Valley company Orchid Health is promising the, quote, most thorough embryo screening available through what's referred to as genetic prediction. The first of its kind test can allegedly detect significantly more risks of gene mutations and abnormalities than the screenings currently used by most IVF clinics. But some medical experts are skeptical, arguing the science behind the tests is flawed. Washington Post Silicon Valley correspondent Elizabeth Dwoskin joins us now with more of her reporting on this. Elizabeth, good morning. Such a talker, certainly controversial, both from a medical perspective and then I think also just people's opinions on something like this being possible and should we do it or not. I know you spoke to Orchid Health's CEO and several medical experts, even families who have used this new type of embryo screening. So first, just talk me through how this works, why it's different than the current testing available, or for the many families that go through IVF, the kind of typical testing that doctors want to see those embryos go through before they're implanted. What's different here?
Sure. Well, I think the core question for anyone watching this, even people who might not have access to this because it is expensive, is would you want to know if your future child was going to get cancer potentially or diabetes? And would you want to know their traits potentially, such as their intelligence and height? Because that is what's happening and what's coming because of a wave of these new genetic tests. One, the family that we interviewed, for example, and this is fairly common, people who go to these kinds of services, you might have a rare disease in your family. It could be someone who had extreme bipolar disorder. In the case of the family I spoke to, they discovered at their IVF clinic that they had a gene for hearing loss. And they wanted to know if they were going to pass those genes on to their embryos. And that's not something that a standard test can see. IVF clinics sometimes have to get data from the parents. In this case, the family, they were immigrants. The parents were in another country that doesn't do genetic testing. But what Orchid does, and some other companies that are launching or just launched, they do a version, they all do a different version of it, but they do like a full genome sequence. So your genome has 3 billion base pairs, 3 billion base pairs. If you've ever taken a test like that where you get your blood drawn or your saliva, sometimes these tests like 23andMe, they'll only use a portion of the genome. What's new now is you can actually start to see the whole genome for a lot less money than you could a couple of years ago, which is why I think that these tests are going to come to more people. And then seeing the whole genome allows you to potentially see more rare disorders. It also allows you to make predictions about diseases that could take place later in life, like Alzheimer's or breast cancer, not even stuff the baby would be born with, but stuff your future child might be affected by as an adult.
And I know those several scientists you spoke to were pretty critical, right, of this genetic testing. What are they saying?
Well, some of the scientists, first of all, said it could be valuable for rare genetic disorders. But one thing to know is that there's still a lot we don't know about genes, particularly when it are our genetics, particularly when it comes to predicting diseases that happen later in life. So, you know, there might be dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of genes that go into play, that come into play to impact whether I might get a disease, God forbid, like cancer or bipolar disorder or Alzheimer's or obesity. And then there's a lot of environmental factors that also come into play. So scientists still don't know everything about how the genes interact. They don't know how the environmental factors, and there's also this question of bias, because most people, it's not well known, but most people who have given up their genetic data for research in order to do these studies that allow us to make disease predictions are American and European. And so if you are African American, you might have a 50% less accuracy for tests like these.
I mean, by the way, I think one of the concerns here, right, is just what it costs. I think it's $2,500 just for single embryo, on top, of course, of the cost of IVF, which is so expensive, in some cases beginning to be covered by insurance or companies for some people. But that certainly sort of gatekeeps, at least for now, the technology. And then there are ethical concerns, this concept I said of this sort of creating super babies. Tell us about those ethical concerns, what people think might not be right about this type of testing.
Did use the term super babies. First of all, I believe that, Savannah, that the cost is going to come down because it has. I mean, 10 years ago, a genetic test was a consumer genetic test was over $1,000. Right now, it's under $300 in some cases. So I do believe the cost will come down. In terms of ethics, I think a lot of people, I was just talking about this at dinner with some friends last night, a lot of people don't want to know. They feel like that's playing God, that nature has done things in a certain way for a long time. And on some level, especially when you get into traits like intelligence or height, that might be playing God. You know, most people who, especially if you go to an IVF clinic and you're dealing with infertility, you're just happy to have embryos, to have a child. But I want to hold the other side, which is that we don't know a lot of the reasons for infertility today. And possibly, I mean, not possibly, it's known that a lot of that has genetic causes that are poorly understood. So for people who've had infertility, who are going the lengths to get IVF, which is expensive for many people, though it's increasingly going to be covered by insurers next year in California, it's going to be a mandate to be covered by insurers. You know, it's not so far-fetched to think that if a genetic test can tell with certainty that you might pass on certain diseases to your baby, that new genetic tests, which show even more diseases, could be covered.
Elizabeth Dwoskin, certainly a talker. Great reporting here. Thank you very much for joining us to discuss it this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get you some money headlines now on this Friday. The Netflix logo might be red, but the company's seeing green this morning after reporting its latest earnings. CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and some other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Happy Friday to you. Yeah, certainly seeing green. Netflix reporting quarterly earnings that beat forecasts, and that's thanks to the success of the final season of Squid Game. That had 122 million views, and of course also from continued gains from its ad-supported tier. Now, the streaming service is also raising sales guidance for the year, although while the stock is just slightly lower, as analysts say the company is being too conservative with its outlook. Now, Netflix does have several big shows coming later this year, including the second season of Wednesday and the final episodes of Stranger Things. Peacock is raising prices next week and will start testing a new slimmed-down tier. Now, the streaming service, which is owned by NBC Universal and Comcast, it will hike prices for the ad-supported premium plan by $3 to $10.99 a month, and the Premium Plus plan to $16.99 a month. That's starting July 23rd. Now, a select tier that will feature current seasons of NBC and Bravo shows and an assortment of older titles. That one will cost $7.99 a month. Peacock reported 41 million paid subscribers in the first quarter. That's up from 36 million at the end of last year. And all right, well, it's Krispy Kreme's 80th birthday today, and the chain is giving customers a gift. When you buy any dozen donuts at regular price, you can get a second dozen original glazed for just 88 cents. And the deal is good at participating stores while supplies last. Now, if you do order online, use the code BDAY to get the offer. The company was founded in 1937 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Savannah.
Wow, 88 years.
88,
I remember,
yeah.
like, maybe it was just that it was new that it came to San Diego, but when it was like this, you know, big deal, that it was like this novel thing. I mean, there's still
Yeah, it just feels like so
fantastic.
recent.
Yeah, I agree.
I know.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much. Sure. Coming up, if it's Friday, that can only mean one thing here on Morning News Now. When we come back, we've got your ticket to the world of Hollywood and beyond. Grab your popcorn, your coffee, everything you simply can't miss this weekend is next. Stick around. Finally this hour, it is Friday. Doesn't that feel good this week? It means it's time for your weekly can't miss list. That's a look at all the movies, shows, and music you got to see, you got to listen to this weekend. Joining me now, Ralphie Aversa. He is host and producer of USA Today's Entertain This, and our friend Ralphie. Good morning.
Savannah, good morning.
A lot to get through this weekend. Interesting kind of things that are hitting the box office in terms of how they're rating critically. Let's start on Smurfs.
Okay, well, not rating as well critically.
Because we've been talking about these amazing movies, F1 and Jurassic World, and like these big, and you know.
Absolutely, yeah. But, you know, at least to the Jurassic point, this is a bit of a nostalgia play here.
Yep,
We've
true.
seen Superman, Jurassic, and maybe one more that we're going to talk about here shortly. Let's talk about a few positive things, though. First of all, only 89 minutes. Second of all, rated PG. Well,
it's so true in this day and age.
Right, exactly.
Why does everybody think they need 3 hours?
They don't.
Yeah.
And the Smurfs movie does not, and it doesn't do that, thankfully. Most importantly, we got a new Rihanna song because of this movie. And Rihanna, of course, is one of the voices in this also. So
definitely the
Smurfs
coolest
out
part.
this weekend. Maybe a good play with the kids if the weather's
for
not
kids.
great where your area is.
You're exactly right. And there's a lot of the country where it's not, so that's a good idea. Okay, there's a new I Know What You Did Last Summer. This is kind of interesting. It's like part remake, part sequel.
Correct.
Sort of?
Yes, no, it is kind of a sequel to the 1997. Oh, my goodness. This came out originally in 97, original. And yes, we'll have Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. reprising their roles. They tell us it felt like a high school reunion. They really hadn't seen each other since the late 90s, or worked together, certainly, since the late 90s in those movies. So a few new faces in here as well. Madeline Klein, Chase Sweet Wonders. Again, I Know What You Did Last Summer. The sequel, we'll call it a sequel, out this week.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Also out in theaters, Eddington. This is a COVID era, right? But kind of like a Western, people are calling it.
Yeah, and what's really weird is this was written before COVID and then kind of during COVID adapted to be a COVID era Western standoff between a sheriff and a mayor with, of course, Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal. This one, critically, if that's what we're going to talk here, rated the best of all the movies we're talking about for Can't Miss list today.
Also, it's A24, I see. I feel like they never miss.
Yeah, I believe this premiered at Cannes as well earlier this year. So, yeah.
Is it like suspenseful, sort of, or like what's the vibe?
It's like a black comedy. It's,
okay.
It's kind of one of those.
Gotcha. Okay, also, if you're going to stay in this weekend, if you're going to stream something new on Netflix, a documentary, we love Netflix documentaries. This is Amy Bradley is Missing. Tell us, this is a true story, obviously, it's a documentary. Tell us about it.
Yeah, again, obviously happened in 1998. Amy was on a cruise with her family, went missing. What happened? We'll try to figure it out over this 3-part doc, 40 to 50 minutes each episode, and again, only 3 parts. So this is a good one to binge this weekend.
Yeah,
because you'll be able to get through that. And it's, I already watched the first episode. Can't wait to get to the other 2 this weekend. It is suspenseful, and it leaves you with some questions for sure. And they speak with a lot of people in this too, including your parents.
Right, love that. Okay, we talk a lot about BritBox shows in this segment, which I'm always like, who has BritBox? Since we've had that conversation, I have a lot of friends actually who have BritBox, so people are really watching this here. Something called Outrageous. This is like its final episode is streaming?
Yeah, 6 episodes, first season, final episode. You could watch it now on BritBox, and you could, Google BritBox. You can subscribe. I believe you can subscribe through Prime Video as well. But this is about these sisters in the 30s, this historical drama comedy. Basically, if you're waiting for the Downton Abbey movie and you need a little filler, Outrageous is for you. 6 episodes, and now you can watch them all, including the last one this weekend on BritBox.
All right, I just love when they're like, it's like a re-dramatized true story.
Correct.
You know
yes,
what I mean?
exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like I read that the kind of like the Kardashians of the 30s, which is a very interesting way to put it.
Wow. Okay,
so
that they should be marketing it that way if they're not already. That is good, Ralphie. Okay, Billy Joel, a new documentary. Fans are raving over this too.
Yes. All right. So part 1 premiered last month at Tribeca.
Right.
Part 1 is premiering now tonight on HBO, and you'll be able to stream it on HBO Max as well. Then we get part 2 the following weekend, and this is interesting. The highs and lows of the Piano Man's life. Some interesting cameos in here too, including Bruce Springsteen, who says some very interesting things about his music compared to Billy's. That's a little tease for you. I don't want to give too much away. But you realize how high Billy's career went and how low his life went at some points as you watch this first part.
Wow, so interesting. Okay, speaking of music, we've only got 20 seconds here, but Trisha Yearwood out with her first album, her next album, 16th album actually, in a long time, and she also did this whole one herself.
Yeah, she wrote it, which is something that's kind of rare for country, at least compared to the other genres, but she wrote this whole album. Little Lady, if you need one track off of this one, I would listen to that one.
Okay, there you go. Ralphie, perfect. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Happy watching. Happy weekend.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.